Chapter 8. Detective Jenkins is on the case. Do you mind? Of course not. Not at all. Excuse me, officer, Mike said while taking a big step to the side. That's Detective. Detective Jenkins. The detective knelt down next to the limp corpse, like a catcher squatting down behind home plate. He looked around the room, like a retiree at a casino scoping out a slot machine. The detective was a heavy-set man with a bronze complexion. He wasn't fat, necessarily. The detective had a bulkier build. Given how broad his shoulders were, I'd peg him as a former star athlete, probably a running back. He probably even made it to state in his heyday. Odds are he entered the police academy straight out of high school. The years weighed heavily on the detective, like a third-generation coal miner 2 days from retirement. He moved throughout the crime scene slowly and intentionally. You found the body? I did. You on the job? On the job? Are you a cop? You found a body, determined it was a crime scene, and set up a perimeter. Oh, no, sir. I've just watched too many episodes of Order and Law. Interesting, he said with a shrewd skepticism. The detective reached into his back pocket and pulled out his cell phone. He shook the phone to activate the LED flashlight. The detective scrounged around the room with no clear direction. There was blood splatter from floor to ceiling. The damp environment compromised the credibility of the crime scene and stymied the investigation. The body was soggy and mushy, like a damp 30-day-old dish sponge. The detective was meandering about like a hound dog sniffing out a bowl of kibble. Do me a favor. Sure thing. Mr. Order and Law, why don't you try to tell me what happened? What happened? Yeah, what happened? How'd you find the body? Well, the tour guide led us down to this room and boom, there was a body on the floor. Just like that. Just like that. Interesting. Seems odd to me, being a simple detective, that this would be part of the tour, he said while turning his flashlight over to the ceiling. I don't think it is. Interesting. So who called 911? The tour guide did. So the tour guide found the body? No, I found the body. Interesting. Have you been on the tour before? First and last, by the way things turned out. So, a first-timer notices a dead body clothed in black off a beaten trail. Mike immediately noticed the mood in the room shift to an uneasy comfortability. See what I'm getting at? You think I'm a suspect. I think it's a profound coincidence that you found the body. What are the odds of someone finding the body in this specific place? From what I gather, you couldn't have seen the body or had a clear line of sight to it from the tour, he said while flashing his light back at Mike. There was a trail of blood. Kat spontaneously interjected herself into the interrogation. The detective looked over to Kat for some additional context to her statement. His facial expressions gave a grave depiction of his inner turmoil. His buddies on the force probably loved inviting him over for poker night. His face was riddled with an obvious lack of deceit. Who might you be, exactly? From my experience, people tend to respond to extreme duress in one of three ways. People either freeze, fight, or flee. Kat's subconscious kicked into high gear, and she froze up tighter than a mosquito stuck in molasses. I'm Kat Myers. I'm concierge for the ship. I started last week. How interesting. What is? I'm just trying to figure out how you fit into this picture. You seem about as out of place as that corpse over there. I was with Mike when he discovered the body, she said in an attempt to bolster his ailing alibi. Isn't that interesting? No, not particularly that interesting at all. I heard the ship was haunted, but wasn't expected to stumble onto a dead body. The detective shook his phone and placed it back into his side holster. He wore a black plastic phone holster on his waistband. I was never much of a fashionista, so I couldn't judge his choice of unique wardrobe accessories. Well, Miss Myers, that's the thing about crime scenes. What might not seem interesting to the untrained observer might make the difference between solving the case and closing the case. Are we free to go now, Detective? Well, that depends. Mike spontaneously scoffed at his repugnant response. Depends on what? Mike protested. Your alibi. My alibi? I'd have to be pretty freaking stupid to discard a body and then claim to be the person to find it. I was born at night, but not last night. No, not your alibi. Hers. Mike turned toward his companion and pleaded in her defense. Katharina was with me all night. She hasn't left my side for a minute. Interesting. Not a minute? Not a minute. Fair enough. Are we free to go? For now. Friendly word of advice. Don't skip town, and don't leave your suite. Words. Come again? Those are words of advice. You said word. If you're going to accuse of murder, you don't have to murder the English language in the process. Like I said, don't skip town. Mike absconded Kat and headed back to the suite. He had tunnel vision the entire way back to the suite, like someone stuck in a familiar rush hour commute to work. In what seemed like a matter of seconds, Mike and Kat arrived back at the suite. Mike pulled the room key out of his breast pocket. As he reached down into his coat, he noticed a smudge of blood on the back of his hand. The blood had a hardened consistency to it, like a smear of tomato paste on a focaccia roll. Somewhere along the line, Mike had committed the cardinal sin of crime scene investigation. He contaminated the crime scene. Mike turned over his hand to conceal the blood stain from Kat and intentionally inserted the key into the key slot. What happened to your hand? She said with a compassionate concern in her voice. She gravitated towards me and clasped my hand. She sandwiched my hand between her palms, like a hipster embracing a warm cup of limited edition homemade tea. Apparently, my attempts to be sneaky had fallen flat on its face. I was about as good at concealment as a polar bear on a desert island. Oh, that. It's nothing. I must have just brushed up against the wall or something. I'm fine, really. The light glimmered green on the door lock and made that distinctive hotel lock clicking sound. It never occurred to me, but where was this date going? Where did I want it to go? It wasn't often that I discovered a crime scene on a first date. So, what a night. Yeah, what a night. Would you like a drink? After all that happened tonight, I thought you'd never ask. I'm not really sure what this hotel minibar has to offer, but, I said while swinging the door open to the suite. To my surprise, a bottle of champagne was bathing in a freshly iced stainless steel champagne bucket. It's on the house. Uh-huh. That might have been my dinner buzz wearing off, but it seemed a little too auspicious. I did find it a little presumptuous that someone would order me champagne without asking. Either way, it was just the pick-me-up I needed. Why look a gift horse in the mouth? What's the matter? You don't like surprises? Surprises? No. Not in the least. Kat started laughing at what she thought was a joke. In reality, I was a bit of a control freak. The very idea of surprises went against my very nature. Frankly, I found them to be rather rude and presumptuous. I don't like surprises. I like odds. People are, by and large, very predictable. If you know someone long enough, you can often deduce how they plan on making decisions. You don't say, she asked while delicately positioning the bottle in between her luscious pale thighs. Kat grabbed a napkin from off the table and placed it firmly over the cork of the champagne bottle. She leaned back with the bottle pointed towards the ceiling and clamped firmly between her legs. In a sudden jerking motion, she snapped off the cork. Voila! Not a drop of champagne spilled onto the floor. Nice trick. You know me, I'm full of surprises. Kat swung around and snatched the 2 champagne flutes from the bedside table. The flutes flickered under the warm glow of the incandescent light bulbs. Kat balanced the flutes between her fingers and poured a healthy amount of champagne. In another life, I was a bartender. I can tell. As the bubbles subsided and the champagne leveled off, she handed over a heavenly glass to Mike Allen. Mike grasped the glass from his gentle companion. Mike propped up his glass and tilted it towards Kat. Cheers. Cheers. Kat pulled back her flute and asked, What are we toasting? What are we toasting? New adventures. We did have quite the adventure this evening. The evening has only just begun. Mike gulped and gazed into the deep blue pupils swimming around in the pearly white eyes of Katharina. Do you want to kiss me? Katharina started slowly blushing, like the burner on an electric stovetop beginning to heat up. Seemed she was rather startled by his question and replied curtly, No. Oh, it just looked like you had something on your mind. I had a 50-50 shot and I took it. Can't win them all, but I miss every shot I didn't take. Part of me was disappointed, but the night was still young. My mind. You could say that. Katharina extended her champagne glass out like a relay runner handing over a baton. The glasses made a distinctive clinking sound as they met. Nothing quite sounded similar to the tips of crystal glasses tapping together. Clink, clink.